I want us to be a regional hegemon, and I want to make sure that China does not dominate Asia the way we dominate the Western Hemisphere.
今天的视频话题来源是个外网的视频，美国专家米尔斯海默讨论，如果中国赢了美国会发生什么？先看视频。
What does a world with China as the sole dominant superpower look like? I mean, a little bit underlying our discussion is this kind of idea that U.S. is the good guys and China is the bad guys. First of all, dividing the world into good guys and bad guys seems to somehow miss the nuance of this whole human civilization project we're undertaking. But what does the world look like where China is the dominant sole superpower in a unipolar world?
Well, I don't tend to think of the world in terms of good guys and bad guys. As a good realist, I think that, states are states. Mm-hmm. They're all black boxes. I don't discriminate between democracies and autocracies. Mm-hmm. But having said that, I am an American.
Right.
And as an American, I'm interested in the security of my country, the survival of my country. So I want the United States to be the most powerful state in the world, which means I want the United States to dominate the Western Hemisphere. I want us to be a regional hegemon, and I want to make sure that China does not dominate Asia the way we dominate the Western Hemisphere. It's not because I think we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. If I were Chinese and I were in Beijing and I were Xi's national security advisor, I'd tell him what we got to do is make sure we dominate the world or dominate our region, and then do everything we can to undermine America's position in the Western Hemisphere, right? That'd be my view. So I guess you could say I do view the world in terms of good guys and bad guys because I'm an American. And
more like us and them.
Yeah, it's us and them. That's a nice way to put it. Yeah, it's us versus them. Not so much good guys versus bad guys.
看得出来，海默大佬其实不太在意什么好人、坏人或者民主专制这种意识形态概念，但只要使用这些术语、使用这些意识形态对美国有利，他其实也不介意使用。黑猫白猫抓的老鼠就是好猫。唯一重要的就是美国的利益，甚至以他的说法来说，他要是一个中国人呢，他一定会竭尽全力的想办法削弱美国的地位。这确实不愧为现实主义学者。说实在的，我更能理解这种人的逻辑，即使他们是对手。而国内的很多人也许是和平的太久了，所以有点天真入脑。之前我的一个关于巴以冲突的视频，我已经是很偏向巴勒斯坦了，已经谴责以色列是侵略了。网友有不同的意见也很正常，如果是亲以色列亲欧美的一些人喷我倒是觉得没啥，很正常。但不少天真的自以为自己是国际主义者的一些人，因为我不够一边倒的偏向巴勒斯坦，来质疑我有没有同情心，一口一个正义也是绝了。抱歉，不要道德绑架所有人，绑架国家好吧？圣母诚心是会害死人的好吧？我没有像有些人大喊俄乌应该持续的久点，巴以应该持续的久点，这对中国有利，已经是我考虑到良好的社会风气导向，已经不算是个称职的现实主义者了。我是有同情啊，难民确实很可怜，所以我偏向巴勒斯坦一边，我没有用亲以色列的一些直人嘴里的一些阿拉伯人也在中国瞎搞的往事来当幌子，已经算是够实事求是，够不错了。因为我永远只能无条件的站在中国利益的一边。
Is it possible to have a stable, peaceful world with a good balance of power, with where it's China and U.S. as superpowers? It's a bipolar world, no longer unipolar.
Yeah, okay, so you're hypothesizing a world where they dominate Asia,
yeah,
and we dominate the Western Hemisphere.
Yep.
I believe there would be a great deal of security competition. Intense security competition between those two superpowers.
The definition of intense matters here. So it could be small military conflicts, or it could be extremely large, unstable military conflicts. Right?
Well, conflict, let's use the word war.
Okay.
So I distinguish between security competition and war. And what I'm telling you is you'll have an intense security competition where there's no shooting. Or if there's shooting, it's mainly proxies that are doing the fighting. Much like the Vietnam War, right? Or you could have a case where one of those superpowers was involved in a war against a proxy of the other superpower. Mm-hmm. Korean War, think the Korean War. Mm-hmm. The United States fought the Chinese who were allied with the Soviets at the time. Mm-hmm. but a war between the United States and China, just like a war between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, that's what you really want to avoid. So I think you'd have an intense security competition, right? You'd have wars involving proxies of each of those two superpowers, and you would probably have some wars where one of the superpowers was involved in a proxy, right, with the other one of the other superpowers' proxies.
So it seems likely then, if that's the case, then it would be Taiwan proxy and U.S. fighting China through the proxy of Taiwan.
Well, that would assume the United States, but you want to remember, you're hypothesizing a situation where China dominates Asia.
Oh, it already has dominated.
Yeah, it's already dominated.
I see.
But
where do you find the proxies?
Well,
Australia?
The Middle East could be a good case.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Oh,
Persian Gulf. Right.
Oh, boy. And then our discussion of Israel becomes even more dramatically.
Yeah, well, Israel gets involved. I think in this scenario, if you're talking about a U.S.-China competition, right, and you're talking about the Middle East, I think it's the Gulf. It's the Saudis, the Iranians, the Iraqis. It's the oil.
Don't you think it could be Israel versus Iran with some very 1984 kind of dramatic partnership of Iran, Russia, and China versus the United States, Europe, and Israel?
I think that's possible. Yeah, I think that's possible. Yeah. Now that I mean, I hadn't thought about it until you said it, but yeah, I think that is possible.
Isn't that terrifying?
Yeah. Well, that, in your scenario where China already dominates Asia and we dominate the Western Hemisphere, I think you start talking about where the most likely places that the United States and China go head to head or fight through proxies. I think it is the Gulf or the Middle East. And the scenario that you
其实我不太相信海默大佬没有思考或者想象过中美军事的情况，甚至中国占上风的情况，或者是标题中国已经赢了的情况。但从视频里看得出来，海默大佬其实不太想讲这个情况。所以是海默大佬真的他没有想过吗？我认为是装的没有想过吧。他还在视频里面专门强调，假设中国已经主宰亚洲，甚至是东半球的情况下，中美也许会在中东形成新的军事。现在美国都已经明显抽调了中东的力量来加强亚洲，美国突然在亚洲输了以后还能退回去，想重新入主中东形成军事，这不是在做梦呢吗？他明明在关于某小岛的论述上说，如果小岛子失去了，就会形成多米诺骨牌，第一岛链就会连环的出问题，美国的霸权就会连环的出问题。而在这里反而假设中东又能突然稳住，突然军事了，是吧？其实我不太相信海默大佬是真的这个思路，他应该是想的最好美国不要沦落到这一步，所以不想设想美国落下风的情况，不想影响美国全球盟友的信心。要知道语言是真的有力量的。最后我再吐槽两个消息，一个是阿根廷的自由主义魔怔人总统好像已经部分的激进的口号要变卦了，这样看来阿根廷总统有可能不是疯子而是个骗子了，这就有点无聊了。第二个消息是，最近特斯拉又在成都又失控的连撞了13个车，结合之前特拉斯刚刚打赢的一个官司，这真是莫名的讽刺。我个人倒是不会质疑特斯拉赢了的这个官司的内容，既然特斯拉赢了，那么说明这个官司里特斯拉车主确实有问题。但是很多人就想以此说明特斯拉所有的失控都是车主把刹车当成油门了，我认为这也是不可能的。当然，如果特斯拉车主都这么认为，都认为是自己的错，那我们旁观者其实也没啥意见。不过有些一看就是特斯拉粉丝的小博主发的一些小视频，竟然以特斯拉随便给了几个解释就能嘲讽主流媒体在抹黑特斯拉，嘲讽大部分普通人质疑特斯拉是在无脑爱国，恕我不能忍。你谁呀？别说有很多国家支持国产，嘲讽外国货是正常现象，是天经地义的维护自己的利益。就这他娘的特斯拉总是容易出现失控狂飙，连撞10几个车的事，这难道不是事实吗？难道还有很多人故意去撞车抹黑吗？不要命了吗？扯淡呢！所以特斯拉不管他赢没赢官司，该信的人还是信，不信的人还是不信。而且我认为不信任特斯拉的人只会越来越多。